Hi everyone, Kyle here from Wide Awake PH. Welcome to our new studio. We're going to be shooting our content here from now on, as well as host cupping sessions, tasting sessions, and other community building activities. So look forward to more announcements in the coming weeks. For today's video, we'll be doing an in-depth review on the Option-O. This is a big boy grinder, obviously. It's equipped with a 102mm blind Meissen burr. It's actually one of the more affordable big grinder options on the market today, and it has some interesting features to it that I'm very excited to share with you. So I've been using this grinder for quite a long time. I would say around more than 6 months now, so I know this grinder very, very well. We've been using this grinder both for filter as well as espresso. I'm actually pretty happy with it, although I do have some reservations about the grinder, which of course I will share with you. Let's start off this review by just going over the very subjective looks of the grinder. So in my opinion, the Option-O, despite being such a massive grinder, it has a pretty substantial footprint, it is still quite understated with the way it presents itself when it's on bar. And that's just because of, number one, the finish. It's a metallic kind of aluminum-like finish with a little bit of sheen to it. It doesn't really call much attention to itself. It's understated despite being so large, right? Whereas other higher-end or other high-end grinders in its similar price point or slightly more expensive than this kind of tend to dominate the countertop. So that's very subjective, but of course I would prefer a more understated look. So I'm drawn to this form factor. Although, I do think the black colorway of this can kind of look like a garbage bin in certain angles. So that's why I chose the silver one. I think it looks sleeker, more modern. So moving on from just very basic looks, let's get down to the build quality of the grinder. When you're looking to invest in a grinder like this, you want the touch points of the grinder to be very tactile, very fluid, very easy to use, right? So let's go over the things in this grinder that you do have to touch and feel all the time. Starting with the knocker system, right? This is like one of its really cool features, and I really, really appreciate it. You turn on the grinder, of course, it starts to grind the beans, and then it has this feature where it will auto purge. So once the motor detects no more resistance, the RPM shoots up to maximum, and then that's supposed to minimize the retention. In order to further minimize the grind's retention, they engineered this knocker system, and it's actually really neat. So all you have to do is push it down like this and flick it like 3 times, and that actually does help purge some more of the loose coffee grounds that is in the chute. In terms of the build quality for this, you just have to make sure that the motor is not running anymore, and then you push and depress the clicking system. Because in our experience, and this is in the manual as well, if you do press the clicker while the grinder is running, you run the risk, and it's a very real risk, of grinds actually just collecting here and not actually exiting the chute, and you run the risk of the clicker not clicking back up. So it gets stuck like in this position, like that. And then when you click it, it goes like this. And you don't want that, right? You want this smooth clicking action. So in terms of the tactile feedback of this, it's awesome. You really get a nice thunk to it when you're depressing it, and it just makes using the grinder really, really fun. Besides that, we have this RPM dial here on the side. It's numbered from 1 to 9. You don't get the exact RPM reading based on these numbers, but Option-O does have a corresponding RPM speed relative to the numbering system, which we'll show you up here. So I usually set this at 3 for filter and 6 for espresso, but we'll go on that. We'll touch on that later. And on the other side here, you have 2 buttons. One is just the on-off switch. So of course, when you put it on, the motor's gonna run. You turn it off, motor will stop running. And then you have the other button, which I alluded to earlier, which is you click it and then you just let go. When the motor detects that there's some more resistance, it stops. It was shipped to us also in a very good condition. The box they have this huge like Pelican hard case that comes by default with the grinder, and it was very well packaged. One observation though, when it comes to the build quality that I have some issues with is the grinds adjustment. So in terms of adjusting the grind itself, it's very easy, right? All you have to do is twist. This way goes coarser, so that's counterclockwise, and then clockwise goes finer. Very simple. And then they have a very intuitive number range. So it's not in microns, unfortunately, but it's a numbering system. So from 0 to 9. We'll talk about our settings for filter and espresso later on. This is, very tactile. It doesn't click. There are no detents to it. It's just it's just a smooth turn all around. So that's not a problem for me. It's very good, very easy to use, very easy to control. The problem is sometimes when I'm adjusting my grind size finer or coarser, depending on the speed of which I turn, I actually unlock this grinds mechanism here that locks this burr collar onto the grinder, and that just messes up all the grind settings. So actually, when I'm using it, let's say I'm coming from a coarser grind setting and I'm going finer, or each time I use the grinds collar, when I go finer or coarser, I just always have to double check that I did not misalign this collar, or else I run the risk of not getting my grinds adjustment set, as well as having the collar itself spin and unlock. I don't know if it will break the grinder. It's not happened, but it's kind of disconcerting. So I think that's one big problem. I don't know if it's just my unit, because I haven't heard of other people complain about it, but it's there. I've also ordered, for those of you who are super nerds into this coffee grinder thing, Option-O actually released a PCS system, a pre-crusher system. Acts as, of course, a pre-breaker or a pre-crusher that is retrofittable to older units such as mine. But in the newer units that you will purchase, that actually comes stock. So it's very nice of this company to, be proactively thinking of how to make their existing models better, rather than creating an entirely new model with a new set of features just to drive hype. So I very much appreciate that ethos of this brand. In terms of workflow, this has been the smoothest and cleanest workflow grinder that I have ever used. It is very easy to work with for both espresso and filter. There is no mess because all the grinds really just eject into the catch cup. I never get grounds getting sprayed around the counter or on the grinder itself, so it's very neat, very clean. There's no static buildup, again reinforcing that it's a very clean grinder. And in terms of the workflow, it's very easy, right? You spray your beans, you do your RDT shake, you have the motor running, right? And then you dump it, and then it auto purges itself. You don't have to touch the button again, and then you just do that, and then all the grinds are inside your catch cup. Very simple. That is a very, very elegant workflow, and I really appreciate it, because with other grinders, yes, they perform very well. Yes, they look great on the countertop, but man, it just gets very frustrating when you have to take the extra time or the extra steps to make sure that your countertop stays clean. So I really appreciate that, because in a cafe setting or even in a home setting, you'd want your counter space clean and free of coffee ground debris. Let's move on to the section we've all been waiting for, and that's grinds performance. So for filter coffee, I think the manual recommends a grind setting of 7.5 to 8.5. And for the coffees that I enjoy brewing, are almost always around the 8.5 setting. So from here, if I find the taste a little bit lacking, so it's obviously under extracted, I go maybe 8.2, 8.3. And then for coffees that are darker, I go from 8.8 to like 9 plus. And from what I see, you can see it stops turning at a certain point. So the coarsest this thing can go is 9.7. I tried using this setting for a medium dark roasted coffee, and it came out pretty well. So I would say yes, this can grind coarse enough for whatever you're looking for. It makes a great cup of filter, but it's not like great to excellent. Let's talk about the things the grinder does well. So number one, it has a very huge sweet spot, right? So, I was telling you about the grind settings. Honestly, even if you set it at 8.2 to 8.5, anywhere there, your first cup, the hit rate is going to be really high, meaning the number of good to from the number of very drinkable to great tasting outcomes is large. So what that means is you're gonna actually waste less coffee when brewing with this grinder because the sweet spot is very large. It makes brewing filter coffee pretty easy. And then in terms of characteristics in the cup, I would say the signature flavor or trademark of this grinder is it adds a certain sweetness to all your coffees. So it imparts a flavor, okay? And what do I mean by this? It means, regardless if you're brewing a chocolatey, like chocolate forward coffee with low acidity or a coffee with very high acidity, that's very bright and vibrant, you're experiencing that coffee, you're hit with this kind of generic, like creamy sweetness. And that's just the signature flavor of this grinder. Is that good? Is that bad? That's more for you to decide. Right? If you're looking for an added sweetness to your pour over, then you're gonna love it, right? If you're looking for like 100% maximum clarity, 100% maximum acidity, don't hide the flavor notes that is present in the coffee I'm brewing, then you're not going to like or enjoy that particular characteristic of this coffee, especially if you're that kind of person and you only have this coffee grinder as your grinder, because then that's gonna be bugging you, right? You'll be like, oh man, what am I missing out on, right? What other flavor notes are present in this coffee that is being obscured by this sort of generic sweetness? But at that, I wouldn't say that the sweetness this grinder imparts to your cup is overwhelming. No, it's not. It's an accent to the clarity that is already present in the cup. So let's talk about how this coffee performs in terms of clarity and acidity presentation. Actually, I would say the clarity is very good on this grinder. I wouldn't say it's on the level of Brew Burst. It's not at the level of the Unimodal Brew Burst version 1 that is being utilized here on the Zerno. But at that, you do get a lot of flavor clarity. You do get a lot of flavor separation. I would say from when you sip, from the first initial sip all the way up to like 50 to 75% of that sip, you're hit with a lot of like clarity and acidity. You're gonna definitely see the flavor spectrum of the coffee that's being presented to you and nitpick, right? And you can see and you can taste with certainty, like, okay, flavor note 1, boom, flavor note 2, boom, flavor note 3. But as you're experiencing this acidity towards the half to last fourth part, then you're hit with that generic sweetness that I was talking to you about. Like, I understand what Option-O was going for, what the Option-O is going for here, right? They're trying to give you a very balanced presentation that can appeal to a wide range of people and makes dialing in very easy because you have a good balance of acidity and then sweetness at the end. Your hit rate, the amount of successful brewing outcomes for filter coffee is very, very big. But the ceiling of dialing in, I would say, is not very, very high. Of course, you can win a filter brewing competition with this. I'm not saying, like, of course, your skill plays a big factor in how you present the flavors of your coffee. But what I'm saying is, if you're just looking for 100% clarity, 100% flavor separation, you just want the vibrancy and the acidity, you don't care about this added sweetness, and you know how to manipulate the brew such that you can get more sweetness by playing around with stuff like temperature, contact time, the number of pours and all this, then maybe this is not the grinder for you. But if you just want one grinder to do it all and to do it all well, then this is a very interesting option out in the market. And we haven't even talked about the capability of swapping out the burrs on this thing, right? So from what I understand, you can put in, of course, the 102 mm Meissen burrs on here, which is what I'm describing. But you can also put the 102 mm SSP HU, which is supposed to give you like a more tart kind of presentation. From what I understand, you can also order a 98 mm burr carrier and install it on here. It won't be blind anymore, of course, but that opens up the 98 mm burr world to you, and from there, you can pick and choose, right? You get the great workflow, and then you get to see what kind of burr set you prefer for your own life, for your own brewing life. And that's that's the fun of this grinder. You're not locked into the 102 Meissen burr, even if it's a really good all-around burr. All right, so now we just talked about the filter coffee performance, which I describe as good. It's a well-rounded cup profile, high hit rate, kind of low flavor ceiling. But let's move on to the more interesting component of this review, which is its espresso performance. I would say that it is a good filter coffee grinder, like how I described earlier, but for me it is a great espresso grinder. And this is a rare combination, by the way, because most of the time you get a grinder and you expect it to perform really well for one of those two brewing styles, but the other brewing style will suffer. Whereas here you're doing well on both fronts, just a bit better on the espresso department. What do I mean by this? For espresso, with a traditional style basket, the one that comes stock with most espresso machines, I'm at 1. I'm at grind setting 1 for my coffee. And around 0.8 for something even lighter. So 0.8 to 1. And then if it's darker, we go from like 1.2 to 1.5. That's how I enjoy brewing with this. And then for the RPM, if I want a clarity forward shot, I do an RPM of 3, so a lower RPM gives a bit more flavor separation in my experience with this, as well as a slightly faster flow rate because there are less fines, less resistance in the puck. But if you're looking for like a sweetness forward presentation, you don't really need the flavor separation, then you can increase the RPM to 6 or above, and you get something sweeter with more body. So for me, this works extremely well for espresso, such that I've actually been using this more for espresso. I would say my grinding experience with this is like 70-80% espresso and the rest for filter. And then for filter, I've been using the Zerno with the brew burrs more often, and then I'm alternating the both of them for filter. And then on the odd times, I'm using the Kinu pour over burr. So for espresso, what makes this really interesting is it's a really good middle ground of classic and modern. If you're into your classic espresso shots that are like medium roast, medium light roast, and then you still enjoy pulling at a ratio of 1:2 to 3, then this can work. This actually works very well. You get a lot of body, you get a lot of sweetness, but you do get some extra flavor separation that is just not present in grinders at a lower price point. But where it gives you a little bit more of that modern experience is it can do the modern profiles really well. If you're familiar with turbo shots, yeets, soup, these new profiles, this actually works really, really well. So, just to give you an overview, we've been enjoying using the X-Works Convex basket in combination with the El Rocho Manos S, which we're selling, by the way. And instead of grinding at the 1.2 3.0 grind size for a traditional basket. We're actually at a much coarser 2.5 for our espresso right now. It does these modern shots extremely well. And what do I mean by this? It means, I will grind at this coarser setting at 2.5, dose at around 16 grams for the S-Works basket. And then do a really fast fill in the beginning of the shot. So in the first 2-3 seconds, the pump is on maximum until we see water filling the basket and spurting out. And then once you see some of the espresso coming out quickly that way, we set the pressure all the way back down to like 2 bar, 3 bar, and let the shot run for a ratio of 1:4, 1:5, 1:6, somewhere there. A longer shot. This kind of espresso is modern. It's a more clarity focused shot with high flavor separation and a silky body. The opposite of a modern kind of espresso. It's basically a more concentrated pour over. And this grinder works really well for that. And that is really fun. You have the option to play around with traditional classic profiles, but you also have the ability to upgrade your setup, and you have enough clarity, you have enough flavor separation, still enough body to play around with these clarity focused shots to give you a balanced experience. So in that regard, I would say the espresso performance of this grinder is, top tier. I would say it falls slightly short of the Bentwood in terms of espresso performance with the Bentwood, the V63, the one that we reviewed before. It edges this coffee grinder out on sweetness and body, but this beats the Bentwood in terms of clarity and flavor separation for espresso. For filter, this is better than the Bentwood. With regards to the Option-O-One's filter performance, I just want to give you some benchmarks. I think a lot of people in our community has ZP6, so let's use that for reference. I would say for filter, despite me saying, the clarity could be better, this still has more clarity and flavor separation as compared to the ZP6. You just get more out of the coffee in that regard. It's just a clearer, more forward, more transparent presentation compared to the ZP6, which is a very high standard already for hand grinders for filter coffee. Another key difference to the ZP6 is that you can push this grinder high in terms of your brewing ratios. I think with the ZP6, yes, you can brew up to 1:16, 1:17, but sometimes you can run the risk of astringency when brewing at these higher ratios, and then the flavor intensity kind of falls off. Whereas with this grinder, at those ratios, 1:17, even 1:18, you can there's still good flavor separation, still good intensity, plus the sweetness that this adds in towards the latter half to latter fourth of the sipping experience is beneficial when brewing at these very, very high ratios. Just so you understand that there's some nuance to this. It's not just, okay, it's good for filter and then, man, it's trash. Because it's just good and that's not excellent. It's just relative to even a cheaper, relatively less expensive grinder that is brew or filter coffee optimized. Of course, this isn't going to perform as well as that. But when we're evaluating the grinder as a whole, considering that it can be used for both filter and espresso, and it's not lagging so much behind this grinder, even if I use this grinder more often for filter, it's just a really good value proposition, I think, because of its workflow, because of its upgradability, because of the ability to swap your bursts, and the fact that, again, you have a very competent espresso experience together with a good filter coffee experience, just makes this a very, very, very worthy addition to our studio and to our lineup of grinders. It's very fun, very solid to use, and we can get a lot of great, tasty coffee outcomes with this grinder. It's just a great tool. That's it for today's video. I hope you found the review on this grinder helpful, and if ever you're in the market to purchase a big boy grinder like this, please tell us which coffee grinder you chose and why. We're always curious to hear about your equipment selection, how you're brewing with it, especially if you're brewing our coffees with it. Yeah, it would be nice to know, so please share that in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe our videos as that helps out a lot, and see you again soon.